Good evening, poultry keepers, and welcome to another episode of Poultry Keepers 360 Live. We're happy to have you join us tonight, and we've got a really good show for you tonight. We're going to be talking about how you can stop poultry predators. So, coming up, we're going to get right into it. Before we get started with our show tonight, there's one thing I do need to mention, and you may or may not be aware, but the president of the American Poultry Association passed away very unexpectedly a few days ago. Um, Mark Parthwaite. Um, you know, we're going to miss Mark. He was a good guy, and the vice president will be filling in that position, and they will be making the decision on what to do about the vice president's position. But I just wanted to let you know, and our thoughts and prayers go out to Mark's family and all those that are involved there. So, anyway, let's talk about poultry predators. We've got a little presentation for you tonight. So, Karen, if you'll get us, there we go. How to stop poultry predators. Um, we've got a wide variety of predators to show you. Some are opportunists, some are sneaky, and some are just downright treacherous to deal with. But let's take a look at the first one. We're going to start with the feline family. And the first one is a domestic house cat. And you may not think about a house cat being a predator, but these are the ones that will see maybe some baby chicks running out there, or a broody hen with some chicks, and they'll see an opportunity and they will grab a chick and run off with it. So you don't see significant losses from house cats, but it does happen. I don't know. And to the rest of the team here, if y'all have any observations or things you want to add in, please do that. We've tried to include a picture of the animal and also what their tracks look like. You may see tracks around your poultry coops and not sure what they are. You can refer back to this. And incidentally, we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation we're going to put into the file section on Poultry Keepers 360, and you can download that and have it as a permanent reference if you so desire. So our next little feline, well, it's not really a little feline, but is a bobcat. These things can be persistent. I lost 8 um, geese one time, one at a time, about every other night. And no matter what I seemed to do, I never could catch the bobcat or deter it in some fashion. Um, Really, about the only thing you can do with a bobcat is to trap it in some sort of live trap, and then deal with it there. Um, Remember that um, some species are regulated in some states, so take those regulations into mind as to what you can and cannot do. If you look at the tracks, they have the rear of the pad has 3 lobes on it, and this is kind of typical of most cats. Um, the difference becomes in the size of the track is a good indicator of what you're dealing with. Jeff, you had any dealings with bobcats up in your neck of the woods?
No, we have them, but I haven't had anybody report. You know, the bobcats up our way are few and far between. So I'll tell you where I had an issue with a bobcat was out one of my customers in Southern California. Every night the bobcat would come down out of the hills, and it would kill 10 or so chickens every night, right? And carry some off. But which I thought was strange. I mean, it's a pretty urban area right there on the outskirts of Ramona. So, but yeah, up our way, we have them, and, we occasionally see them, but like I said, they're few and far between. So they don't usually make us a whole lot of trouble with poultry.
I think when I was having my problems with bobcats, it was because it was probably a female that had a litter of kittens, because she was going after the bigger birds. She didn't bother the chickens, but she glommed on to the geese and the turkeys pretty quick. And the bobcat's cousin, up in our northern tier states, I think they've got some, and particularly in Canada, is the lynx. And it's hard to see in this picture, but if you look at the tips of the ears, they have little long tufts of hair, and that's one of the quickest ways you can distinguish a lynx from a bobcat. Now, if you notice, the feet are much larger, and they're just a bigger, heavier, beefy looking animal than a bobcat. They're also a little bit lighter in color, although I think that can probably vary from cat to cat. One of the things you can do with these livestock guardian dogs, and we'll probably talk about them on multiple animals, can be your best and the most effective way to deal with these animals. Although a big lynx could be a challenge for some dogs, so bear that in mind, because these things are kind of like a bobcat on steroids, and they have the attitude to go along with it, I understand.
Now I'm just curious. Do they all have that short, stubby, tiny little tail?
Bobcats and lynx, yes.
Yeah, just the bobcat and the lynx, as far as I know, have that. But
seems off balance. Yeah.
Well, our next critter will have a longer tail. So, depending on where you are, these are called mountain lions or pumas or panthers. Down here in the southeast, we refer to these as panthers, although the ones we have are not as large as the mountain lions out in the west and up north. But they can be pretty aggravating. Here in Florida, our panthers or mountain lions, whatever you want to call them, are considered an endangered species and are protected by law, and you can't mess with them. Trying to trap one of these or eliminate it in some fashion is a big no-no here in Florida. Now, here again, a livestock guardian dog can help deter them. They usually will go up and over the fence on your poultry coop and get into your coop that way. So they're pretty good at climbing, as you might guess, because these animals, at least the ones we have here, have bodies pretty much about 6 foot long. Add on the tail to that, and they can clear a pretty high fence with no problem at all, and scale one equally as well. Jeff, do y'all have these things up in your neck of the woods?
Yeah. You know, when we asked don't take any offense to this, Rip, but whenever the Fish and Game Commission is asked about us having mountain lions or cougars, they all say, no, we ain't got none of those. But I see every year somebody gets a picture of 1 or 2 or 3 on a game camera. You know, they're deer hunting game cameras. So yeah, they're here. Speculation is the Game Commission is actually replanting them and relocating them back in, you know, to try and get things back to the way they were, you know, 200 years ago. Mm-hmm. But I wish they'd just leave things alone.
It's funny you say that, because I would get reports from people that I knew what a panther looked like here and had seen them, and they'd say, well, we've got panthers here in Central Florida where I live. And they said, no, they're all down south in the Everglades. Well, when I left the Game Commission to go to work for the Florida State Fair, I was driving to work one day, and I just happened to glance on the side of the interstate, right close to the intersection of I-4 and I-75. And lo and behold, on the side of the road was a roadkill panther. So I thought, So as soon as I got to my office, I called the Game Commission. I said, and I mentioned a wildlife biologist by name, and I said, let me talk to him. And he got on the phone. I said, by the way, Don, you know, those animals you say that are only found down south, there's one on the side of the road dead near the intersection of I-75 and I-4. I dearly love them. telling him that. But he called me back. He said, "Yeah, you were right." I said, "Dude, I know what a panther looks like. I know."
All right. Can I revisit then? So we just went through the felines, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me again what you think might work to help there and what does not work.
Your biggest help, I think, is going to be livestock guardian dog. Otherwise, you're going to have to sort of completely enclose your flock one way or the other, and you're going to have to use some heavy wire. Those panthers can, regular chicken wire, poultry netting is nothing for them. They'll tear that apart, as is hardware cloth. Welded wire may slow them down, but it's not going to stop them. So what I recommended to folks here in Florida who were having a problem was to use chain link fence, and on the inside of that, put 1x2 welded wire. But it can be a costly situation to protect your flock in the manner I know. And I know because you've got chain link fence for your birds.
Yeah, but I have really weak chain link fence, so I'm just lucky so far. Yeah. It's not sturdy.
Well, that kind of chain link fence you got would stop a mountain lion or a panther. Okay.
But it wouldn't stop a domestic cat or a house cat. Do you know what I mean?
They'll just climb right up over that and right over the top.
Yeah.
You haven't had any problem with cats, have you, Karen?
I've had cats take chicks, but not adult bird. Not even past like 5 weeks. Just
usually it's the smaller,
mamas.
younger chicks that they pick off.
Yeah. All right.
And the canine or members of the dog family, we're coming up next. So who we got? Oh, we got a dog. These things can be a real nuisance, and it's not always the feral dogs that are a problem. It can be one of the neighbors in the neighborhood may have a dog or two, and they get out and they come over and we got chickens, and when we go up to them, they run, and that's something fun to chase, and they'll grab one and kill it, and they'll see another one running, so they'll grab that. They can do some serious damage to a flock of birds. I know that a friend of mine lost about 50 Rhode Island red yearling birds. Just dogs just coming in, just grabbing a bird and killing it and going to the next bird, and the next bird, and the next bird. And it's a mess. Livestock guardian dog can help prevent that, but good fencing will keep them out. Now, dogs are diggers, so they'll dig, and if they're persistent, they can dig and go under the fence. But what you can sometimes do is protect your fence around your coop is put 1x2 or 1.5 inch welded wire. You've got I'm trying to get where you can see. Okay, you got your fence coming down, and then coming out at right angles. Just lay it on the ground, but attach it along the bottom to your poultry coop wire, and they can't dig through that. So that's one way to deter them, or any other digging type predator as well. And Karen, I'm curious. I know you're in a fairly urban situation.
Yep.
Have you had any problems with dogs?
I haven't yet. I know that they, all dogs are different, right? But a dog on a full frenzy, isn't stopped by electric poultry netting or anything like that. But like a casual dog walking by is. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all about how much adrenaline does that animal have when they're trying to get somewhere.
And electric wire is something you can use even on the felines as well. I've got a friend out in Washington State that raises New Hampshires, and I was looking at his setup, and he was talking about it, and he's got some seriously heavy 8-foot high chain link fence, and he's got an electric wire around the top of it, and then 1/6 inches off the ground. And that thing, I found out quite by accident, puts out a serious shock. You don't want to get it close to that. And I asked him, I said, why do you have such a high chain link fence? And he said, well, we have predators out here like bears and panthers and this kind of thing, and it takes a serious gauge wire and a heavy duty shock to deter them. Matter of fact, he used 3 strands of electric wire, one at the top, one at the bottom, and then one at the middle.
All right, I'm going to show my ignorance right here, but
Mhm.
my understanding with the electricity was that they had to be touching the ground in order for the electric to actually shock them. Like, so if
Yes, but the chain link fence connected to the
ground.
poles is the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, if
And-
they're up high, 8 feet off the ground, how does it actually shock them? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you suspect a problem or a predator is out there, game cameras, along with what Rip's talking about, some game cameras that is watching the perimeter of your fence can actually be your first detection, right? So
Yes.
you can see if a coyote or a dog or something's coming and checking on it. They're building up the courage. So if you go the extra mile and you do the electric fence, what you do is smear that electric fence with a bunch of peanut butter, right? And when they start licking the fence, and especially on a rainy night with good ground moisture or the help of a garden hose, they're well grounded. Most predators that take that direct shock that Rip's talking about will not be back, right?
I had not thought about the peanut butter trick, but that would
Yeah.
work great.
A couple
Shall we
times a year,
can we
you just
turn off the fence first? Yeah.
yeah,
Before we start smearing
can.
peanut butter on it. Yeah.
right. But yeah, you just smear some peanut butter on the electric part of the fence, a couple times a year, and game cameras have come down now to under $100. So unless you get a fancy one that sends pictures right to your phone, like a surveillance camera, you've got a big investment in your birds. So you might as well make an investment in their security. But yeah, the peanut butter on the electric fence works really, really well.
Cool.
I'm going to file that little tidbit away. That's good to know.
Well, and it leaves the predator in place, right? To help. That's their territory. Like, versus taking out. If you're constantly taking out all the predators, then a new predator just moves in and they have to learn the lesson, right? So.
Yep.
What we got next?
Somebody cute sticking out their tongue.
Well, I thought that was an appropriate picture to use in How to Stop Predators with a fox sticking his tongue out at you. But if you notice the difference in canine tracks and feline tracks, the feline tracks, both the front and the rear, have a deeply lobed rear pad, and canines have, sometimes they don't even have a lobes on their rear pads, but you'll also see that you can see the toenails on canine tracks where you can't on feline tracks. But these little boogers, and I know Craig Hansen has had a lot of problems with fox getting his birds from time to time, and they'll come in, particularly if you live in a sort of a suburban area. These are what the biologists call a cosmopolitan species, is they are not averse to living and dwelling around people. When I was at the museum there at the state fair, we had a family of gray fox come in and dig a den before we knew what was going on up under our center stage area, and had a litter of pups, and they got to be a real pain because they was chasing a maintenance van all over the place early in the morning. But this is a gray fox. You notice his muzzle is much shorter looking than a red fox, and also it's kind of hard to tell that. But the curious thing about gray foxes, and we have them mostly in the southeast, they will climb trees. So if you have a tree overhanging your poultry coop, it's nothing for these little rascals to climb the tree, go out on the limb, and jump down and grab them a bird. And they will take multiple birds, just like the red fox. Here again, electric fencing, livestock guardian dogs can help prevent that. Also, these critters will also dig just like dogs and go underneath your coop fencing. So you need some way to prevent that from happening. I know some people have even dug down when they were building the coop fencing and put in a concrete footer. So when the animal would hit that, it was down deep enough to prevent them from tunneling under and going in. And it doesn't take a very small hole. You'd be surprised for these things to get in to your chicken coop. If you've got loose wire, that's an easy in for them.
All right, I'm going to ask Jeff a question here. So all this predator stuff, I know you're a huge proponent of pasturing, like moving your birds on pasture. Like, how do you handle? I mean, how do you handle that if you're supposed to? You're not going to concrete block into the soil your birds that you're moving around all the time.
It just depends on which model of pasturing you're doing. So if you do the small movable pen, you know, they pretty well contact the ground all the way around. Only during certain species, you know, like when raccoons, fox, or when they have young that they're trying to feed, are they really like the worst problem? I mean, depending on how many you have, they can be a problem. But a lot of folks are using the electrified netting 4 foot high, you know, and that does a good job. The people that are fighting pretty much all the predators, you know, hawks, owls, you know, the black-headed vulture, we forgot that one, Rip, you know, coyotes, fox, etc. Everybody seems to be shifting to the guardian livestock dog, you know, whether it's a Pyrenees or an Anatolian, or actually finding that a Pyrenees Anatolian cross works really well as also. So the more birds you have, or the more time goes on, I see 70% of poultry keepers just making the shift to a livestock guardian dog. Some people get lucky because there's rescues for the Pyrenees. You can find them out there. You just have to watch them and make sure you got the time to train them. They may or may not be a poultry dog, right? So you know, and if they've ever been a pet or a house dog, it's going to be really hard to get them to guard the poultry. But it's been done. It can be done. It just takes patience and training. But yeah, you know, the Pyrenees do a great job, and so do the Anatolians. You know, and there's other dogs out there as well that can be trained, you know, as keepers, shepherd keepers for poultry. But
yeah, I see here in Florida more and more people are going to the livestock guardian dogs.
Right. Yeah. They also keep people out. Like when I visit my friends in Florida, they've got 2 or 3. I don't go in where the poultry are without them with me.
Exactly.
Right? So they'll keep people out, they'll keep dogs out. You know, they wake up in the morning, they'll find the remains of a fox in there that tried to, you know, sneak in and get one. So they do an excellent job. So
what we got next, Karen?
Well, I just FYI, it looks like the comments happening inside of the events are not coming through to StreamYard. So just I might be able to pull them in later, but keep commenting, y'all. But all right.
We'll do the best we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Coyotes or coyotes. Another
just
member.
Depends on where you're from, Rip. Both are correct. So
True.
yeah.
These are bigger than the foxes, but not as big as wolves. These things can be a persistent problem if they're not dealt with. And many times you can get help from your state conservation agency, or at least we used to be able to do that. I don't know if they still do or not. I've been out of that business for a while. And the bad thing about coyotes, is they run in packs. So it's usually not one of these things that you're dealing with, it's multiples, and they can really work on a flock of chickens. And not only will they work on a flock of chickens, any small pets you have, like dogs and cats, um, coyotes will pick those off. I've had a neighbor lost 2 cats here recently, not too long ago, and she couldn't figure it out. I said, "You probably got coyotes around here." And then, sure enough, in another 3 or 4 days, I saw one cross the road in front of us. Um, so, good fencing, livestock guardian dogs, um, electric fencing. Again, if you've got one or can get one, use a game camera to give you some early warning about what's out there and what you may be dealing with. Can go a very long way.
Hey, Rip, before we get too far down the road, so now, so far, all the predators that you've covered, if they're going to eat it, they carry off the whole bird, right?
Yes.
So they pick them up and carry them off. Now, here, when I was a much younger person and I trapped, the fox would not. So you could kind of tell where a fox, grabbed a chicken because there would be a circle of feathers or fur or whatever, right? So as we go along, if we know what we're so where the bird is attacked and what part gets eaten first is a pretty good indicator of what your predator is. Not to be gross and ruin anybody's supper, but if you go out and you see something that's half eaten or partially eaten or whatever, knowing which part got attacked first and what they ate off of the bird is a pretty good indicator of what that predator might have been.
Excellent points. What we got next, Karen?
All right. We're going smaller.
Get into the sneaky critters here. The weasel family. These things it's amazing how small a hole they can get through to get in and get your birds. Weasels.
That's a cute little fella.
He is. Those big, that sucker will bite you.
They're cute till they show up in your chicken coop.
Yes. And they can wreak havoc. And many times, weasel will kill several birds just for the fun of killing them. Usually, they grab them by the head, and then I don't know, Jeff, what they do up there, but down here, that's the part that they go for first, is to eat the head, and then go on and get another bird and repeat.
So up here, when we have a weasel attack, generally they suck the blood. So we'll find we'll find a small wound in the neck of the bird, and the weasel just basically bled the bird out and sucked the blood. And depending on how hungry it is and what size the birds are, you can see anywhere from 2 to 10 birds just laying around. The feathers are still on, the bird's intact, none of the meat got eaten, everything's pretty much intact. But yeah, when we've had weasels in our hen house, that's exactly how they did it. And they can get through a hole as small as a mouse does. So basically anything, say a 50-cent size, inch and a quarter, inch and a half hole, if he can get his head through, he's coming in, right? And if he can get his head partway through, he's going to chew the rest of the hole and finish it. So they are really tough. This is where the hardware cloth around your coops,
that pays off.
It does.
Or even metal sheeting, if it's good and tight, that can help as well.
It appears like they kill for sport. They're one of the animals that, likes to, there's a little bit of sport to what they're doing. Like they like to chase them down just for the sport of it. But yeah,
I think once, and I think this is true for a lot of predators, once that bird is moving and running, that grabs their attention, and they key in on birds like that.
Let me ask this, just because you talked about it again. Is it best to put the welded wire or hardware fence inside of the chain link, not on the outside of the chain link fence?
Inside of the chain link, because if it's outside, they can tear that off enough to gain entry. So you want that inside.
Yeah, and even the wooden part of your coop, you want to skirt that on the inside with hardware cloth. It makes it more difficult for cleaning and so on. But if you'll, bend it in a 90-degree angle and go around the outside, the inside edge of your building, wherever you're keeping your birds, that's going to keep snakes out, mice out, rats out, weasels, and a bunch of your burrowing type predators.
And we have the cousin of the weasel here, the mink. He's a little bit larger. Usually, at least down here, they're found in the wetter, swampier areas, more of an aquatic type habitat. If you live close to those, you might encounter these things, although they're much more common, I think, up north than we see here in the southeast. But we do see them occasionally down this way. But here again, they're pretty much like weasels in the way they go after birds and the way they kill the birds as well. These things, you'll usually smell them before you see them. And if you go out and you smell something that smells like a skunk, it probably is one. A spotted skunk is a smaller member of the skunk, smallest of the two species we have here in the United States. But they can be just as devastating on young birds. And if you raise quail, these things can destroy a flock of quail in short order. And here again, you got to have that wire. They'll dig in under the fence. You got to have something there to prevent them from digging, and put a hardware cloth or something, small welded wire on the inside of the perimeter fence. Striped skunks, these are larger, but that doesn't mean they won't eat your birds. These are capable of taking a larger bird than the spotted skunks are. And most species of skunks are big on eating eggs. They can go through a nest of eggs faster than you would imagine. But again, you're probably going to smell these if they've been around your poultry coops.
They have very different footprints. That's why I was going back and forth. I was like, wow, those
the striped
footprints
skunk
are very different.
Yes, the striped skunk track looks more like a bear track, except for those long claws. And the claws tell you that these critters are good at digging and tunneling. It's not unusual for them to, particularly if you've got a raised shed or something like that, to make that a home. They'll just go up under your shed and make them a nest.
Yeah. So where do you have the spotted skunk down there? We
Yes.
don't. All I ever see is the striped skunk up here. So I don't know where the range for the spotted is.
I think they're mostly in the southeast. Although I don't see either the spotted skunk or the striped skunk nearly as much as I used to as a kid. When I was a teenager, I was raising bobwhite quail, and I had a real problem with the darn spotted skunks. Never did see a striped skunk, but those spotted skunks were giving me a fit.
See, and up here, our experience is the skunk, they'll take the eggs, they'll take chicks up to about 4, maybe 5 weeks old. And they like to reach in under the pen. We don't get a lot of burrowing. I find that the skunks and the opossum are lazier scavengers,
Yes.
lazier predators. They don't want to work too hard for it. So they were like the least of our worries. But they do, if they find a nest egg, you're right. It's a goner, man. They'll stay right there and finish it.
Well, we know one person in California who lost a huge amount of her birds, of her adult birds, to skunk in like 3 nights, like wiped out.
It's unusual. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, right? But it takes a good, large, mature skunk, and that skunk probably had young somewhere back at a den. For them to be that aggressive. Normally they're pretty lazy here. There's enough roadkill to.
Didn't look like they ate barely any of it. Just killing them all for fun. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't
Um,
know what it is about California, but they have
every
seem to
predator.
grow much larger predators out there than we have here. I was talking with Walt Leonard, bless his heart, one time, and he was talking about uh, he had killed two coons that were getting his chickens, and I just gasped. I said, "Well, how big are they, Walt?" He said, "Well, they were 50 plus pounds, and it's hard for me to imagine a raccoon that big, but they can get big and they can do some damage."
And I'm again city girl here. Do the livestock guardian dogs help against predators like this? I mean,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
even the
Yeah.
chase down.
A good one that can smell, hear, and detect really well. Um, they don't care what it is,
Okay.
you know, even a human. So you have to be careful if you get a really good livestock guardian dog. You know, if a stranger walks in that chicken pen, you
They're
know,
called.
I don't want to be them. If they don't smell right, talk right, yeah. So they do their job really, really well. If you get a good bloodline and are patient and let you know that person that you're getting it from train it a little bit, let it run with the other dogs and learn what it's doing, they're invaluable. Um,
And funny, we were just talking about raccoons. Um, these things, their front paws are almost like our hands, and they can actually reach into a coop and grab a bird and pull it up and eat what they can of it right there, and then leave the body in the coop. Um, and they're persistent, they're smart, and they can really cause you some problems. Traps work, electric fence works on these things. Um, you want smaller wire. It took me, I lost several birds one time because I wasn't smart enough to figure out that they were climbing up on the wire on the coops on some bantams I had, and they would actually grab a bird that was sitting on the roost and pull it over and kill it. Um, a mother coon with a bunch of babies, they are the absolute worst. And again, these are cosmopolitan animals. They live in the city. It doesn't bother them. They associate people with food, trash cans, dumpsters, uh, just attract them like crazy. So if you've got trash cans, you want to make sure they're secured where the coons can't get in them, because that'll draw them like flies. Birds. We talked a little bit about birds earlier, but we're going to look at some. Maybe a couple of them might surprise you, might not. I don't know. Crows. Um, they will occasionally take young chicks, but they are also bad about stealing eggs. I learned that the hard way. I had picked up 3 eggs out of a pen of Rhode Island Reds that I was really wanting to hatch, and that was the first 3 eggs they laid. And I realized I'd forgotten my egg basket, so I made my notes on the eggs and set them on top of the coop. Went in the house to get my egg basket and came back out, and the eggs were gone. The crows had just snapped them up just that fast in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes. Uh, they're quick about that.
yes,
But
they are.
they do have one benefit. Uh, if you have crows hanging around your place, it's very unlikely that you're going to have birds of prey like hawks and owls, because they will absolutely run them off. And I know some people will use crow decoys and stick them into trees around their chicken coop just to deter uh, birds of prey like hawks and owls.
I've had a crow drop an egg on me. I'm like, how in the world did I just get an egg dropped on my head?
You're
But
definitely special. That
yeah.
doesn't happen very often.
Well, that crow took a lot of my eggs for many years. So, and he would like literally just fly up, sit in the tree, and drop the shell. Might eat the shell sometimes too, but like you would just see broken shells everywhere.
Yep. I can work on eggs, that's for sure. Hawks, yeah, what can I say? They'll snatch young birds. They'll snatch bantams pretty easily. Um, two of the best things besides the livestock guardian dog is to put hawk netting over the top of your pens. Hawks just killed one of my husband's nankins today. He's out lining the runs with fishing wire right now. What you can do is you can put monofilament fishing line and string it back and forth across the top of your runs. And when a hawk hits that, he doesn't go any further. Again, the crow decoys can deter these things. But remember now, hawks, all birds of prey are federally protected. Crows may or may not be protected in your state at a particular time of year. So you can't do anything to harm the birds. You can only try to deter them.
Rip, your old fishing game, life is coming out right now. Where I live, it's the 3 S's: shoot, shovel, and shut up.
Yeah, well, I've done that too.
So,
but I'm trying to keep people out of trouble if at all possible.
I mean, I'll do what I can to protect my animals.
Right.
But at some point,
I agree.
The game's over, right?
Yeah.
So lead poisoning always fixed the problem. So I hate to say it. I enjoy watching them fly around, and I love the fact that they take care and control rodents and do all that. But when they get lazy and they start eating my chickens, then game's over. So
this particular hawk is a Cooper's hawk, and I had more trouble with a pair of Cooper hawks that were nesting just 1,000 yards away from here.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when they had a nest of young, you better have your chickens protected one way or the other, because the hawks were going to snap them up.
Yeah, we fight the red tails up here. So it's can't tell you I've ever seen a Cooper hawk, but yeah, we got red tails. They're plentiful. There's plenty of them.
Do you feel like hawks and birds of prey are more of an issue when you've got trees around you, or less of an issue, or just about the same?
Well, most of them want a perch tree. So they want a high open tree that they can, usually like a dead branch or something, or not a lot of leaves on it. So they'll come in, they'll perch, they'll do their observation, and they wait for that lone chicken, out of the way to swoop down in. And back to Rip's comment about the monofilament. So if you string that above your head height in, unusual patterns, just go back and forth. Now you want a heavier 20 plus or higher test. You don't want a lightweight like you'd use for bluegills and panfish, but you just zigzag that however you want to zigzag it. So there's two thought processes there. One, the monofilament will glisten in the sun. And they say that sparkle or that glistening intimidates the hawk. 1, 2, if you ever watch a hawk hunt, it typically needs what they call a glide plane. So it'll drop down really fast, and it kind of levels out for a second right above its prey. And the monofilament, they'll just kind of get tangled up in it or tripped up in it or whatever, and it really confuses them. So it is a good deterrent. It's not foolproof, but it does help.
Jeff, I've also seen people hang CDs on monofilament line, let it blow in the wind, and the light would glint off of it. How successful that really was, I don't know. Another thing that I've seen people do is build structures, probably 18 to 24 inches, flat roof on the top, but open on all sides. And I think the theory was their chickens would run up under that if a hawk got out there, but usually.
You got to have a pretty smart chicken. You got to have somebody, you've got to have a rooster out there that's really paying attention.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't see as many of those old cagey wise roosters as I used to. Every now and then, I'll visit a place and there's a rooster that is watching everything, but they're not as common as they used to be.
No.
And this goes back to previous conversations. We've bred the aggressiveness out of a rooster. because we want docile roosters for our breeding programs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you bred that aggressiveness out, right, you've also bred a lot of that protectiveness out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you can't have both, right? You're not going to get a rooster that's, going to run down a dog and like it for breeding, because it's going to be aggressive and hard to handle. So just.
This is kind of going off track here, but I know some of the old timers also believe that if you had a docile rooster, the fertility was not as good on that bird as it was from the more aggressive males.
I'll second that. There's no doubt in my mind. The more ornery, aggressive, and hard to get along with that rooster is, he's absolutely going to be your most fertile rooster. It's almost out of spite because you wish he'd go away, but But yeah, that's absolutely true, Rick.
I know Ms. Donaldson said one time that her best breeding males would fight a bobcat.
I don't know about that. That's a little bit of a stretch, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
Well, Ms. Donaldson was known for stretching the blanket. But
okay.
Cousin of hawks or owls. Usually these are more active after dark, not always. They can also be active during the day or start getting real active before dark and right after dark. These are sometimes referred to as silent predators because as they fly, owls have, if you ever see an owl feather, and I wish I could have found one, but they have fine filaments or hairs almost like on the edge of their feathers, and that really muffles the sound as they fly. It's very hard to hear them, but they can be deadly on your birds, and they can, if you've got open coops, owls like this great horn swoop in and grab a bird right off the perch or off the roost in a heartbeat. So again, you need to cover your coop some way, either with a solid roof or netting.
Well, our owl, that used to terrorize our flock, and they'd only take the head off. Yeah. And then once it was dead, they'd sit right there and they ate the breast out first, right? So they'd come down literally with those talons and the weight of them. They'd just rip the head right off, right? Just clean decapitation. And then they'd just go at tearing the breast out.
Owls have extremely strong feet and a lot of pressure on those talons. Even the little screech owls, they can bring a tear to your eye. I can tell you that from personal experience.
Here in the Raleigh suburbs of North Carolina, but when I have my birds in open free range pens and coops, I have to check the inside of the coop before I close them up, because twice there's been an owl up in the rafters waiting for me to lock him in with my birds that night. But watching what the chickens are doing is helpful in that manner. Like, yes. Are your chickens someplace weird? Are they not up all on the roost? Are they all a Twitter? You know what I mean?
If you learn to watch your chickens and pay attention to them and listen to them, you can learn a lot about predators.
So, all right, let's go.
We've had customers, I've had clients, the owl actually goes, flies down, walks right in the coop door, because people leave their coop door open so they don't have to open it up in the morning, go right in on the roost while the birds are sleeping. And so they're pretty intelligent and very resilient. Again, I'll go back to shoot, shovel, and shut up. And look, I really like owls. They're gorgeous birds. I want them to all live, but not at my house. So,
and I have no idea how they went in. So, but they were in there. But I basically have human-sized doors on all those coops, so they could have gone in.
Eagles can also be a problem. Although I can tell you, I've never got a complaint about bald eagles. Or when I worked at the Game Commission, to my knowledge, we never received a complaint about eagles bothering poultry, but I understand from Jeff that can indeed be a problem in some areas.
I have a larger account, more commercial type, but pastured poultry outdoor in southwest Georgia. They've counted over 100 eagles sitting in trees, and they've also watched the average eagle will come down and kill 5 or 6 4 to 6 week old birds, right, and eat them right there in front of them. Right, they're not shy, they're not proud. They just, so when you're losing 300 to 500 birds a day, that's and
that's become a national story between them and the
it
federal
has.
government.
It really has. I mean, if people look that up, it's a real deal. And so if you let the generations of eagles go on, the parents are teaching the hatchlings where they get food. So 10 turns into 20, then 20 turns into 40, and before you know it, you've got a lot of eagles feeding on a flock. So yeah, they definitely, they can be a problem.
So guardian dogs are not helpful with that, right? Because they
somewhat, very little. It depends on the guardian dog. So I've seen guardian dogs that will guard off and run off airborne predators as well as ground predators. But again, you need to do your homework. You need to ask the right questions. You probably need to go visit and watch the dog in action to make sure you're getting what you want. But yeah, again, in that same area, Southwest Georgia, one of the farmhands there was breeding Anatolians, and he had a good line that would run off, eagles, owls, hawks, as well as, and I wouldn't even think about going in that group of birds without him right beside me, right? And it just ain't going to happen. As soon as you get close, the dog's hair goes up, and you start seeing a little teeth, and you get out of there. So
eagles are big birds, right? You got an eagle problem and you breed show poultry, you're talking about a roof on something, right? A real roof. Yeah.
I mean, they got
not netting or
6 foot plus.
Yeah. So, I don't want an eagle problem. If I could
no, you don't.
Yeah.
What we got next, Sharon? Other predator. Before we get into other predators, Jeff reminded me that I left one out of the show, out of the PowerPoint here, and that's vultures, black vultures. I've never personally had a problem with them. Jeff, what's been your experience with the vultures?
Yeah, I mean, when they're starting to get desperate, black vultures are getting to the point now where they'll come down, attack a cat, small dogs. They're actually, they're killing newborn calves right out in the open fields. So while they're also protected, there's a whole lot of the Game Commission folks that are saying, look, if they're harassing you, shoot them, right? I get it. They're protected. I don't want you going out and just shooting them for sport. But if they are giving you trouble, you need to get, the black-headed ones are way worse than the red-headed ones. They're way more aggressive. They're not shy. They're going to drop right in there,
About the, I remember very few complaints about vultures. I do recall some where they were getting calves as they were first born. But the most bizarre one was they were eating the stuffing out of some guy's boat seats. And I went over there, and there was about 20 of them there just pulling out all the stuff and just feasting on it. I guess they got a good cleaning out over it. I don't know. But
yeah, what would they be doing that for? That doesn't make
I
any
have
sense.
I never could figure it out. I don't know if the seats looked like animal hide to them because they were kind of leather. I don't know. Who knows what goes through a bird's head sometimes.
Yep, I don't know.
What's our other predators?
Guess.
I don't know. Oh, one that this won't kill birds, but they will actually eat the feathers on your birds. If you live in an area that has roaches, they go after the main tail feathers and the wing feathers mostly. And I guess they're going after maybe the protein in the feathers or what, I'm not sure. But they will definitely chew feathers and cause damage to your birds that way. Not something you normally think of. You just need to use a good, safe insecticide that's safe around poultry to curtail these things. Rats. It's sad to say, but if you got chickens, I think sooner or later you're going to have a problem with rats and mice. They get into the feeders, they chew the feathers on birds. Rats will kill young chicks and eat them, uh, and they can be a real problem. And they multiply like rats, real fast. Uh, you need to keep everything as clean as you can. Uh, they can go up and around and over small holes. They can be in your poultry coops in a heartbeat. They I have actually seen them eating eggs. So you can also put out bait stations. Be careful about what you use as a bait station, or what you use to bait them with, because some of the baits are harmful to poultry, birds in particular. A friend of mine made a great bait station that kept all the dogs and the cats out of the rat bait. But he took a 4 foot piece of corrugated black plastic drain pipe, 4 inches in diameter, and shaped it into a horseshoe shape and dropped the bait in there. It went down to the bottom, and then he would lay it flat where the rats would go in and get the bait, but the dogs and cats and other animals couldn't get to it. So, Jeff, what's been your experience about that?
Yeah, rats are a real nuisance. So on multiple occasions, working with folks who buy in 50, 100, 200 chicks at a time, we'll find that the rats will actually carry the chicks off, and they'll stash them in the wall or the ceiling or somewhere, right? So you can put 100 birds out there, 100 chicks out there. You can come back the next morning and there might be 25. And if you see that with no evidence of dead birds or remains, really good chance you got rats. And, to go along with what you said, Rip, keeping stuff clean, eventually, as poultry keepers with poultry feed around and having chickens, we're going to, rats are somewhat inevitable, right? They're going to happen sooner or later. So you need to come up with a plan. That's why I'm not a big fan of free choice feed all the time. You're just inviting them in. Spilled feed, also, you're inviting them in, both them and mice. So, that's part of the reason why I recommend limit feeding.
And if you're going out there and throwing scratch grains all over the place, or you're setting up a rodent cafeteria.
Yeah, let's just feed them on the ground. So, yeah, it's all right. That was sarcasm, by the way.
That's all right. Mice, just as bad as rats. These things can, and rats will too to some extent, but mice can just chew the tails off of birds. And they do it while the birds are on the roost, and so the birds just sit there, they're asleep. Rats are just over there chewing on the tails. And if you raise exhibition poultry and you have a mouse problem, they can really set your show season back big time in a hurry. And the same preventatives for mice as for rats.
Okay.
Karen's asleep over there.
I'm busy.
Possums, as Jeff said, these are kind of lazy predators, but they will take younger birds. I've seen them go after older birds too, but mostly what I was losing the possums would be chicks and young birds up to about 8 to 10 weeks. And if you've got a family of them, they are persistent. So again, you've got to have wire to keep them from getting in, and if you need an enclosed coop, because they'll climb up. They can climb really well. Climb up and over electric fence or electric wire will also deter these things, as will livestock guardian dogs.
I'm going to just share. Jennifer Bryant is giving us a lot of good information over on Facebook that's not showing up to show everybody else. But she's had her chicks hidden, stolen by rats, just wiped out whole brooders. But she's having good luck with baking soda and cornmeal killing the rice and mice. So I just thought I would say that.
Sorry,
Somebody who
time to
had
take my medicine.
All right, you go take your medicine.
No, that's all right.
I have video from trail cams of a possum who just kept coming and just pulled out all the babies out from underneath a broody mama and just ripped them, sat right next to her and ripped them to pieces.
Yep.
And then went back and got another bird and then pulled off his arms or his wings and its legs. And I was like, wow, thanks for staying on camera for that whole venture. But
They can be persistent.
yeah, she just sat there like, oh, bummer. Yeah.
Turtles, usually aquatic turtles. These things will grab baby ducklings, baby geese. Of course, the bigger the turtle, the bigger the bird they can take. I saw somebody in the comments, and I can't find it now, mentioning alligators, and I guess I should have included that, but not everybody has to deal with that. Here we go, Walter Clark. You might mention alligators. I had one eat a few hundred ducklings. We didn't have that problem here in Florida, but we got more alligators. I don't even think we got a mud puddle that either has an alligator in it, one that just left, or one on his way trying to find it. Biologists say we've probably got 1 million alligators. I'm more inclined to think we're closer to 2 million alligators at this point. And they can vary in size from little babies to 13, 14-foot alligators. And of course, the bigger they are, the bigger bird they can take down. And yeah, they can cause you a problem. Again, a nuisance wildlife trapper is going to be your best bet to get rid of those. I don't recommend anybody trying to catch an alligator. There's ways to do it and there's ways not to do it. And the ways not to do it usually wind up in you getting hurt bad. Alligator bites usually always get infected.
If you are going to catch an alligator, make sure to have somebody film you doing it.
And send us the video. We'll
That's
show
right.
it in a future show. We'd like to see that.
Right.
Snakes, usually rat snakes that we have down here in the southeast, although I'm not sure what y'all have for snakes in other areas of the country. I know you have rat snakes in other areas of the country too. But these will eat eggs. They'll eat anything they can bite. And if they can get the head down, they can usually get the rest of the body down. They can dislocate those lower jaws, and they can swallow something much larger than you would think. You just got to use fine mesh fencing inside, like hardware cloth or something of that nature. If it's over much of your fence is over much of a half-inch hole, snake can get in that. Trust me, they can do amazing things. Now,
And if you're in Australia, snakes
kill
kill everything in Australia. Australian snakes are scary.
They got bad snakes over there.
Right.
But electric fencing will also deter snakes. I've seen that happen.
All right.
Bears. We do have problems with bears here in Florida, believe it or not. We've had bears in excess of 600 pounds here, and they can be very destructive. They can be very persistent, and they're very smart. You know, they can figure out how to get into or around what you're putting up for deterrent. Livestock guardian dogs may or may not help. It just depends on the bear and their size. Again, if you're having a problem with the bear, the best bet is to contact your local conservation agency. And they have the culvert style bear traps that usually are quite effective. And last but not least is a two-legged predator called people or humans. You know, I don't know really how you can prevent them. Folks are going to figure a way. If they want to get into something, they're going to get into something. And you hear stories on a regular basis about people losing birds to other people, just stealing them. You can put up a trail cam or security cameras so you can at least get pictures of the culprits and turn it over to the authorities. But somebody that would steal chickens is a pretty low person in my estimation. You had any problem with humans, Jeff? Hello?
Yeah, I think he's muted.
Ah, he's talking.
Yeah. Jeff, unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yes, we have plenty of problems with humans. So people think, oh, they're not going to miss one chicken or two, and right, they just kind of help themselves in the middle of the night. And it kind of depends on where you live and how bold the humans are. But yeah, they are the worst. Depending on where you live, they are the worst. So, right, if you live rural enough, they're probably not a big problem. But if you're in the suburbs or urban areas, yeah, that's a real problem.
I personally lost an entire flock of Morons to human predators one night when I was gone.
Really?
Yeah, it took everyone, probably about 52, 53 birds.
That's where having the game camera set up, then you have some picture evidence as to who it was and all that. And of course, if it's a human predator, you want to make sure you have that game camera in one of those locked boxes, chained to a tree. But if that's what you suspect, then you need to get some video proof. So actually nowadays you can get video, if you have electric out there, you can get video surveillance cameras that Wi-Fi link right to your phone, and like the Ring doorbells and stuff like that. So
you can talk to them while they're stealing your birds.
Yes, you can.
That's what I do with my chickens. I think I have 8 cameras over there now. So sometimes the chickens are being annoying.
With them, or
I hit the alarm button and scare them all just to see if I can throw them into a molt. Yeah. But
all righty then.
No, but sometimes that'll get that last little baby to go into the coop. Yeah. I only tried it a few times.
And I think we got one more slide, don't we?
Oh, sorry.
There we go. Just some things you should remember. You can get private wildlife trappers in many areas. They'll go in and remove a nuisance animal for you, but they're going to charge you a fee for it. It's not a free service. I remember in some states and some locales, it's illegal to trap and relocate wildlife. So if you trap and this is especially true. We got a law here in Florida. You cannot trap a raccoon and take him 5 miles down the road and turn him loose. Just against law to do that. Now, some animal control agencies, I know our local does not, but some animal control agencies will loan you live traps or box traps if you've got problems with dogs and cats. You can trap them and they'll come out and pick up the trap and the critter too. And like we talked about, some species can only be removed by state wildlife agencies. Bears and your panthers, your bigger problem kids, that's going to be a state agency to deal with that.
I'm glad you're here to tell everybody the legal way to do it, Rip. I'm going to stand by a shoot, shovel, and shut up. So, okay. I don't care what size it is.
I totally lost my track here. Some species like birds of prey, and we talked about this, are protected by state and federal laws. So you have to be careful about how you deal with those. And number 6, if you're in doubt, you should check with your state wildlife agency for regulations that may apply before attempting to deal with predators yourself. Now, I have tried as a former possum cop, I have tried to share with you the right way to do things, although I don't necessarily subscribe to all those myself. So
you have to tell them the legal way to do it, Rip. You did your job. You did a good job, right? So I'm going to tell them the other way to do it, right? So you can make the call and see if you can get assistance, but usually you don't. So
Yeah.
If they don't show up and they don't have time because they're not worried about your flock of chickens, then you got to do something. So
my biggest predator problem I had was a family of coyotes that took over a period of like 4 months, took probably 30 to 40 birds in that amount of time. So I did contact a local wildlife trapper guy. And so he was quoting about $700 for 3 weeks of trapping, but I had to notify all neighbors with dogs and cats within a half a mile of my home before because of the likelihood he would trap their pets. And so I never followed through. That was way too much work.
And sometimes you can use repellents, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And sometimes you have to be careful of the repellent you're using. I had a neighbor when we lived up in Ocala who had a problem with dogs getting in their garbage. And I said, well, I got something that'll stop that. He said, what? I said, well, I've been doing bobcat scent stations, and I got a bottle of bobcat urine. So I went over and dribbled the bobcat urine around his trash cans, and he called me up the next day. He was very upset. I said, what's the problem? He said, well, you got rid of all the dogs, but every house cat within a half a mile has come over here in my front yard. So sometimes the cure might be worse than the problem. Just saying there.
All right. I know we're running long on time, but I'm going to go over
okay.
not all the comments because people have been very good helping each other out, but the ones that we haven't really talked about very much. So bird netting. All right. So there's a variety of types of netting you can put over, right? There's deer netting, there's plastic fencing. Do you have any hints on bad and good netting?
The nylon poultry netting or game bird netting, it's fairly lightweight, but it's strong. It will keep birds of prey out. It's also, having wrestled with all different kinds of options, it's also the easiest to install.
Go ahead.
Is that going to work for raccoons? And
if something can chew through it, it's not going to stop that. But
okay,
birds of prey and stuff like that, that'll work.
And I cannot remember which of the many guys on Facebook that have beautiful pens, but one of them has outdoor yards covered with netting, but large, wide open using cabling. And so I'm very excited to explore that, where it's really just draped over, the wire cable instead of like a structure, or I got to put up poles everywhere to hold it up. So I'm really excited about between the trees trying to put up some cabling that the netting then drapes over. So something I'd never thought of before.
And one thing to take into consideration, and I just saw it pop up as a comment, is that if you live in an area where you get a lot of snow and ice, that can accumulate on that poultry netting, and it will pull it off or damage your coop, and you have to persevere about keeping that stuff knocked off that netting.
I think I'm lucky in that regard, but everybody else. All right. So what about a guard goose? We talked about guard dogs.
I've never had a experience with guard geese.
Yeah, guard geese are actually pretty excellent, but they not so much for birds of prey or airborne predators. They do a great job on, fox, even coyote, smaller dogs, skunks, possums, raccoons. But what I've learned, from clients and so on is one goose per, you don't have pairs, you don't have multiples, because they pay attention to each other and they won't be necessarily a good guard goose. You have one, typically the gander, you want a large gander as your guard animal, and you got to be careful because some of them have a temperament and may be abusive to the chickens. So, but they do a nice job.
Jeff, is there any particular breed of goose that they prefer, or just a larger?
Yeah, just my knowledge of goose breeds is not great. I believe they were getting the larger Africans. You want the biggest one you can get. So it doesn't. I've seen people use the large whites, the Africans. So I don't know, but the bigger the breed, the better off you're going to be.
I know Don Blodgett had some emblems, and those suckers were huge. I mean, they'd stand flat-footed, and they were over 4 feet tall.
There you go.
And I didn't want to go into pen when they were in breeding season.
But those, a goose, I mean, when I was a kid, I had traumatic experiences with a goose. So if you've got younger children, a goose may not be your best option. And even as an adult, if you ain't watching, that goose,
they can be meaner than a snake.
Yeah, right. So you never take your eyes off a goose.
And they don't just bite; they bite and twist.
Yeah, they clamp on and twist. That's right.
And then flog you with the wings to boot.
Right.
Well, and you never quite know what animals. I mean, people have guard donkeys. I know somebody who had goats and didn't have any hawk problems, and then they got rid of their goats, and then they had hawk. You know what I mean? Like, so you never quite know what animals are.
And I know some folks that have had success with a mule.
Yeah. All right. What about the more sustainable version? What about trying to keep your wildlife happy so that they can be an alternative prey source for predators?
I like the concept, but chicken's too easy compared to a rabbit. So, I mean,
Stephen, I have had excellent luck in the suburbs having my neighbors keep chickens free range. So all around me are free range chickens able for the picking a lot easier than mine, which are locked up and more secure. But you have to really talk your neighbors into having chickens willing to die for you. So not likely.
Well, maybe you need to give your neighbors some of your cull chickens so they have backyard free range chickens.
Yeah. It's an option. All right. Here we go. We forgot armadillos, Rep.
I've never seen armadillos kill birds. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I know that they will eat eggs. If they stumble into a nest on the ground, they will eat eggs. And if they get into a nest of young chicks, they may very well eat those. But armadillos are one species that's usually not protected, at least here in the Southeast. And you put those clean them and put those armadillos on the grill, it tastes a lot like pork.
They'll probably be tough. They'll probably be old armadillos.
No. You wrap them up in aluminum foil and a little barbecue sauce in it and put them on the grill. Oh, man, that's good eating.
You're not being sarcastic. You're being honest, right?
I'm being dead dog serious, yes.
Okay.
Dead dog serious?
I never thought I'd want to eat an armadillo.
Is that?
Yeah, you can actually trim around the legs and the tail, and you can pull the body right out, and it looks like a little pig. Seriously, it tastes like pork. It's delicious.
Okay, I'm gonna have to wait on that one for a little while. So to look at them, they don't look like they're edible.
For wild game cookouts, something like that.
All right. We talked a little. You said you saw electric. You said electric can keep snakes away.
Yes, electric fence.
Anybody have any success with the sulfur stuff keeping snakes away?
Personally, I have tried a lot of things to deter snakes, and I really never found anything that works. You remember, snakes don't have a sense of smell. They actually, their sense of smell, so to speak, is their taste. That's why they're always flicking that tongue out and attracting molecules that stick to their tongue, and they draw it back into a special organ in there. And they don't smell, they taste. So
I can tell you one animal.
There may be something out there, just not one I've had experience with.
My chickens do not react to snakes. They just stand on them. They nest on them. They could care less. Literally got snakes across the roost and 3 chickens just standing on it like it's the roost. I could care less. All right. Do we have to worry about dead mice or rats that have eaten the poisoning our birds?
Depending on what you use for poison, there can be some sort of after effects. If you're using a poison that is dangerous for birds, if the rat ingested it kills the rat and they eat that mouse or that rat, then they're getting the poison into their system as well. And you may not think that a grown chicken can eat a rat, but I had a buff coaching cockbird one time. I was outside and I was watching him, and a rat darted out across the yard there, and that coaching chased him down and snapped him up, and that was the end of that rat. He ate him.
I feel like my chickens could eat my barn cats if they wanted to. Chickens can eat anything. All right. Somebody's heading to your house for a barbecue, right?
All righty then. Well, I'm going to have to go out and get me some Army gorillas.
Yeah. All right. And this is the last comment we're going to do because Rip really doesn't like going this long. So
No,
I'm
I
going to get
don't
in
care.
trouble.
If we got some good questions, let's cover them.
But Kim, again, I think Australia talks about just if you do have hawk and eagle problems, that for them, just keeping them locked up for a little bit can cause that eagle or hawk to move on to greener pastures.
You know, I've not tried that, but it makes sense.
This goes back to planning, though. If you have to plan for your birds to do something other than normal, make sure to build that enclosure correct in the first place. Because locking them up for 2 weeks, if you didn't plan for that, you're going to have all different problems. Besides your. All
What
right.
other questions we got or comments?
No, I think we can go. There's lots of comments. Craig, I'm just going to say publicly, I'm sorry that you can't hear us and that we can't have your wisdom when it came to all the predator stuff. But
I don't know what
you
the
can
problem with Facebook is tonight. That's
yeah. And I'm getting some of the comments, but not all of them. It's like certain people are blocked. But obviously, I don't know why.
I would like to know, and if you can hear this, and if you're having problems on Facebook, let us know where you were trying to watch it from, because we post to several different groups now. This should have shown live on the Poultry Keepers 360 and the Poultry Breeders Nutrition site. It should have shown live there.
Well, and they should. We've got people watching in all three of those places, but.
So
there's comments in all those places. It's just a couple of folks that can't seem to get through with their comments, and I don't understand.
Some people,
apologies, and we will try to do better next time.
Yeah,
I
don't know that we will, so don't get your hopes up, people. I don't know. But all right, you want to say goodbye, Rip?
Goodbye, Rip. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. You give me an open, I'm going to take it. If you enjoyed today's show, just peck that like button, because the more likes we get, the more people are going to find our show and get to the good information that we offer right here on Poultry Keepers 360 Live. So until next time, you folks have a good 2 weeks. We'll be back. We'll be smiling and profiling. Y'all have a good one. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
See y'all.